Hello and welcome back to the Game Room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people who cover games nowadays seem to hate them. Or at least don't like the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 1,519 of you beautiful people watching this channel. And to prove that I am listening to what you guys say, and thank you to my Patreon contributors, we have been able to do an upgrade. So now, the lighting, instead of being like this, is now gonna be like this. Hey, I know, look at that, making moves. So let me know if you like the lighting more, if it's better, or if it's washed out and you can see more of my pasty ass skin. But today, I wanted to talk about something that's really close to my heart. It's basically what I founded the channel on, and that is Super Nintendo games that we never got in North America. So let's not waste any time, let's check it out.
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life. This is my game room.
Alright, starting out first, we are going to talk about what I think might be the only quote-unquote Christmas game on the system, and that is Days Before Christmas. Now, I believe this game came out in Europe as well as in Japan, but we never got it. It's made by a company, I think it's Sunsoft, and it's more or less a basic platformer, nothing crazy. It's more the fact that you're playing as Santa Claus and just the novelty of that and everything. I covered it, I want to say, for Christmas of 2015. I enjoyed it. It's a fun game. I've never gone back and played it since. It's more or less a generic Christmas-themed platformer, but if you're looking for a game to play on Christmas, can't really think of any better game than Days Before Christmas. Alright, next game we're going to talk about is one that uses the Link to the Past engine. And if you know me, I love Link to the Past, and it is such a shame, in my opinion, that more games didn't use it back in the day. But the game we're talking about is Gunman's Proof. So Gunman's Proof is a solid game. It has a Old West theme, but it's very much in that Zelda action-adventure top-down style. I covered this, I want to say, in 2017. Think of Link to the Past, but more cowboy-themed, with still interesting dungeons, the ability to fire a gun, there's a horse you can ride throughout it, and it's not very long. It's not great, but if you like that style of game, and this one I do believe was only on the Super Famicom, and as you can see, I have a lot of reproduction carts. This was something I was heavily into back in 2015. I wish I'd focused more on collecting real games than buying $30, $40 ones of these, because now you can buy these type of things on AliExpress for like $10, $20 at the time though, and without having to sacrifice a real cartridge to do it. But still, solid game, a lot of fun. Alright, next one is arguably it's not a survival horror game, though a lot of people want to lump it into that as one of the progenitors of the series. I would say it's more of a point-and-click adventure with a stalker element to it, and that is Clock Tower by Human. Now, this was a Super Famicom release. Some of you might think, oh, this was ported to the PS1 as Clock Tower, but no, Clock Tower is on the PS1 is actually a sequel to this game, and is Clock Tower 2 in Japan. And funnily enough, they did do a Clock Tower 1 in Japan, but we never got it for the PS1. On the PS1. Anyways, so yes, Clock Tower. Very fun game. I covered this in September of 2015. I should have done it for Christmas, but Halloween, but I'm an idiot. And it's interesting because it has multiple different events that can happen. You are chased by someone lovingly referred to as Scissors Man, and he kills all your friends. You play as a girl named Jennifer, and you are all orphans. You end up at this isolated mansion, and depending on what actions you do, you can see your friend die in a shower, get speared through into the pool. Everyone dies, more or less everyone dies, and then you almost have a sanity meter as well that can also kill you. So you can look in a mirror and the mirror can pop out and knock you out. And there's 7 different endings to this. So it's got its replay value. You know, there's better endings than others. You can grab the car and just abandon ship and leave all your friends, but no, the Scissors Man finds you. And it's just, for something that's unusual on the SNES, this is a lot of fun. And it's by a company named Human that also made Vanguard Bandits. And the more and more I'm researching gaming, I find that Human puts out some pretty solid titles. So that one, highly recommend checking out Clock Tower. Now here's one that is the rarest Super Famicom game. I believe it was the last release for the system. Of course, I don't have an actual card, I have a repro card, and that's Rendering Ranger R2. Limited Run actually did a release of this where you can buy the authentic cartridge of it for the first time in the West. I believe this only came out on Super Famicom. I'm not familiar with the original Rendering Ranger, but this game, from what I've heard, it's a combination of Super Turrican in a way with a shooter. And it's not the best game in the world, but it's a pretty solid get. I enjoyed playing it. I want to say I reviewed it a couple of years ago. And in my opinion, the run and gun levels are better than the shooter levels, but it is balls hard, especially level 7. You have to go through a maze-like structure, and if you touch the walls, you die pretty much instantly. And I spent a long time doing that. Also, I think I had some glitches on this, so I'm looking forward to getting the official release. Once again, with all of these, if they ever have an official release come out, I always want to do that, or if there's a port of it, by all means. But there's just something special about playing these old games, which have the English translation patches on them on a SNES, or now an analog NT. No, a Super NT, that's what it is. But still, I enjoy that. All right, now here's the game that was the first ever viewer-requested review on my channel, and this one is impressive because it actually has voice acting on it. It's not great, but it's still pretty decent on the Super Famicom, and that is Star Ocean, the first Star Ocean, which I've only ever played this one, and I believe this one was either made by Wolf Team or Tri-Ace. I can't remember which one. I think it's Wolf Team. I think Tri-Ace is the Tales people, even though they originally were, I think, were the same team. But anyways, solid game. Ironically, for a game called Star Ocean, now I've heard the later entries actually go into space, but you spend most of the time on one planet in this game. Another interesting turn-based RPG. In this one, you almost have a kind of a gambit system where you control one character, but then your other two characters act amongst themselves and can do good things or bad things. You have multiple people you can recruit depending on how you play through it. So there's multiple playthroughs. I only did one playthrough because I enjoyed it. Art style is really nice. It's a very beautiful game. Sounds well, sounds great, but the combat itself did not hook me as well that I wanted to go back and play it again. All right, speaking of the Tales series, the next one we're going to talk about is Tales of Phantasia. So Tales of Phantasia, much like Star Ocean, another game we didn't get, although Star Ocean I want to say was ported in the PSP or the DS or something like that, and I know Tales of Phantasia was ported to the, I think the Game Boy Advance. The combat with this one is you're all on a 2D plane and you have up to 4 characters and they're all in a line, and essentially the character in the front does most of the damage, whereas the back characters will do support, but also that means the character in the front is the meat shield, who will generally get attacked by the main villain. And I found this one more enjoyable than Star Ocean when I played them back in the day. I still probably stand by that just based on what I remember, because it's a very interesting combat system and always makes me want to go and try more of the Tales series. It's funny, I always like starting with the beginning of a series, and I know there's Tales of Arise, Tales of Destiny 1 and 2, Tales of this, Zilla, Tales of blah blah blah, and I'm sure they all have similar combat systems, so if it's anything like this, or if it's an evolution of this, I'd probably enjoy it. But yeah, moving on to the next one. So this is a strategy RPG that is called Bahamut Lagoon. And this was one of the first games that really intrigued me about the Super Famicom. I wanted to know what this was like, because you mean to tell me there's a turn-based game where you have dragons that will just go around and almost act like pets and behave on your behalf, as well as you have squads of units. Now, it's not a perfect game. It's longer than I wanted it to be. When I initially played it, I didn't enjoy my time. Luckily, I went back and actually played and finished it and reviewed it for the channel back in 2015 and got it. Now, one of the things I said in the review, now what's the nice thing about all these games I'm talking about today, almost every single one of them, I have a video about it. So if you want to know more about it, look in the channel. It's going to be under Lucius T, which I used to call myself. So type in that, and hopefully if Google doesn't say, oh, did you mean to spell it this way? Because it always, yeah. Anyways, What you should do in this is you want to build like with like. So instead of having a diverse team the way you think it would be, you want to have a sword fighter team, an axe fighter team, a mage team, and build on the strength that way, as well as the dragons. Now, you can't control what the dragons do, so be aware of that. But altogether, if you're looking for an interesting tactics game, can't do better than Bahamut Lagoon, and I think this one, more than some of the others, would really, really do well for, say, like a Live Alive type remake of it. And speaking of Live Alive, another game, Super Famicom, Live Alive. Kind of don't really need to say much about this now. This was a Super Famicom exclusive, but now that it's come out on the Switch and everyone has seen the majesty that this game was, and in a lot of ways is the progenitor, much more so of Octopath Traveler than even Saga Frontier. Really solid entry. Still worth going back and playing the original, though in my opinion, I would definitely recommend the new one over this one, even though it's almost a shot-for-shot remake. That new addition they added to the ending makes the game so much more enjoyable, in my opinion, as well as the quality of life. But if you want to check out the roots of the series, if you really liked playing the Switch one, don't have your expectations too high, but if you want to appreciate how well they did remake it, check out Live Alive. And the music is still fantastic on it. That battle music is still one of my favorites. Okay, now here's a game that is another super rare Super Famicom game that we never got, and it has kind of a generic title. I don't know what the Japanese title is. Once again, these are all translated, but it is King of Demons. Now, this is a surprisingly fun, I would almost say action platformer, kind of run and gun, kind of not. More in line with, not necessarily Castlevania, but just something of that ilk. It's a solid game. So you start off in the first level, you're a dude who can fire a gun, and then from there you get these demon powers, and you turn into a red demon, a green demon, or a blue demon, and from there you can use different abilities. Now, I didn't know it when I first played through it. You can wait for the crystals to change color, and then you can ultimate your shade, so you can have 3 shades of red, and then you become a better version of that. 3 shades of green become a better version, and that's kind of what you want to do to become a far more powerful demon to get through the later levels. But it's only a 5-stage game, but still, of all the games I'm going to talk about now, if you're looking for something that I think would appeal to the largest swath of gamers, in my opinion, it's this one. This one is definitely one of those games where you will be like, wow, I had no idea. Especially if you're not into RPGs or turn-based or shooters, give this a try. This is a game that I feel like would have done very, very well in the West had it come out. All right, now the next one is a cutesy game. I tried reviewing it for the channel, but I know that the ROM with the translation patch has a bug in it that'll make it crash, and unfortunately that happened, and I couldn't get past, I want to say, level 3. But that's Magical Poppin'. Your standard like Sparkster or Rocket Knight Adventures, those kind of platformy, but a little bit more vertical traversing, and almost where you can backtrack in it. As far as gameplay goes, I enjoyed it. I'm not the target audience for these, but still enjoyed my time playing it. If you are interested in checking it out, give it a run. Not one I'm going to recommend that highly, but I know some people will love this style of game. Okay, so now this one. This one was when I started my holy grail of Super Famicom translated games, because it wasn't finished translating. It wasn't even really finished translating when I picked it up. And that is Marvelous Another Treasure Island. So this is the game that was made by Nintendo. It is the game that Anji Anuma, the Legend of Zelda guy, he got his start on this game, and he did so well with this game that Shigeru Miyamoto basically handed him the keys to the Zelda kingdom in Ocarina of Time and never looked back. And this uses the Link to the Past engine, and for the longest time there was no information on it whatsoever. When I went out to Retropalooza in 2015, I actually bought a booth and set up my playing of this to show people this game. And I had people who did repro carts there looking and be like, oh my god, they finished translating this? And just super fun game. You control 3 different characters, almost a la Lost Vikings or Zelda Triforce Heroes, but each one of them has their own abilities tied to them. So it's almost like a combination of The Legend of Zelda with a puzzle-based Lost Vikings element, but much more action-based, and you go through 4 different lands. There's an interesting story, and to be honest, it's a game that I think would have done really well on the Super Nintendo, and again, uses that Link to the Past engine, which there's Gunman Proof, Goof Troop, and Link to the Past, and that's it. And I don't know about you guys, but I love that style. I love the feel of those games, and especially this one. The main character looks like Link. One of the chubby character looks like Porky from Earthbound, and then the long lanky character kind of has a Simon from Chippendale vibe to him. Not Chippendale, Alvin and the Chipmunks. So yes, that one, King of Demons, those are probably the two biggest gems I would talk about here. All right, so we're getting down to the last few. So here's another one that I reviewed for the channel that I was unable to beat because I stupidly didn't know that you couldn't save the game when you were going through Dr. Wily stages, or the password system got you to the beginning. That's Mega Man and Bass. Now this is another one that came out on the GBA, though I would recommend playing it on the Super Nintendo because you don't have that really cropped imaging. You can see the full screen. You can play through the game as Bass or as Mega Man, though at the time there were so many damn Mega Man games and Mega Man X games that I played through it as Bass because that just seemed more interesting to me. He had a different play style and fun Mega Man-ness. I mean, really, it's a Mega Man game. If you know, especially of this era, but if you're looking for another one to play you didn't know about and you don't want to play the GBA version, would recommend checking that one out. Alright, so I'm actually going to show a game here that I don't have. I stupidly didn't pick up a copy of it when I was in Colorado in 2018, even though it was the Japanese version or a repro version. I can't remember the exact, but it is the Firemen. It came out in PAL territories, and it came out in Japan. It's another game by Human, the people who made Vanguard Bandits and Clock Tower. I think that's right. And it's fun. You go through a tower fighting fires. And you think it would be a two-player game, but it's not. It's just a one-player game. The second player computer, though, is actually surprisingly smart and competent and will go through and behave very well for you. And it's just a super solid game that no one talks about. Once again, Marvelous, Firemen, and King of Demons. Three of the games that if you're not wanting RPGs, because a lot of these are going to be RPGs, but those are three I highly recommend. All right, back to the RPGs. So at that Retropalooza in 2015, I picked up two games from a gentleman there. I think it was, Squirrel Games? I can't remember the exact. Really nice gentleman who was super solid dude and gave me a good deal on this. And he told me about this game, or his friend did, because I told him I love tactical games. And he said, well, you should check out Tenchi Muyo. I guess this is based on an anime. I have no idea. Never seen the anime. But this is actually a really fun tactics game. It's not very involved. There's a lot of characters. It's almost an isometric view. So kind of if you've seen, I guess I would say it reminds me a little bit of Persona on the PS1, even though I haven't played that. But you get a chi meter where you can unleash extra attacks, and it has, of course, anthropomorphic cat creatures that turn into rocket ships. There's a pretty difficult spike towards the end where you have to split your team, but never felt overwhelming. And to be honest, I don't remember that much about it, but I do remember having a good time playing it. And if you're looking for another tactics game, you know, that, Bahamut Lagoon, solid entries if you're looking for games you wouldn't think of on the SNES Super Famicom. Okay. Now, the last PAL game I have to show you here is actually a PAL game. It's not a repro cart, and that is Cannon Fodder. I haven't actually played this, but I wanted to throw it in here because this is a game that I've wanted to check out. It only came out in PAL territories for the SNES, but I believe there is a Genesis version of it, and it's a computer version of it. I think people would say it's probably better for the computer. From what I've gleaned, you control a squad of characters remotely, almost like controlling a squad of people in Command & Conquer and letting them do things for you. And just looks like a fun time and something that you don't get to do all the time on the SNES. All right, and then the last two here, we're going to talk about. The first game I technically reviewed for the channel, Terranigma. Now, this is a repro box back when I spent a lot of money to buy this stupid box. I don't know why I did that. But it's got my copy of Terranigma in it, and I'm going to talk more about Quintet games at a later date. I'm making a big video on that, so we're just going to mention this briefly. But phenomenal game. One of the best games you can play on the Super Nintendo that we never got. This is essentially what I would consider the PAL Territories Chrono Trigger, because we got Chrono Trigger and they didn't. Well, they got Terranigma and we didn't. And there's a big box version of this. It's one of my holy grail items if I can ever find it for a decent price. It's not super expensive. It's just a little obnoxious to spend, $200 to $300 on a box. But then again, I probably have done it before. And the last game we're going to talk about is the actual first game I talked about on my channel that is still one of my favorite games of all time. Probably because I played this before Final Fantasy VI. And it's the bridge game between Final Fantasy VI and VII. This is when they were planning on ending the Final Fantasy series in moving away from the more Christian orthodoxy of Final Fantasy to a more Indian Eastern orthodoxy of Treasure of the Rudras. Or in Japanese, it's known Rudra no Hiho, which I don't know what that means in Japanese, but it's translated to Treasure of the Rudras, and that's the game I have. This game is so freaking cool. There's 3 different main characters. You can start off with either of them. So you have Surlant, Scion, and Riza. Music is phenomenal. There's a gameplay element, almost like Resident Evil 2, where as you go through the game, you see what the other 2 characters do. And then when you play through as the other 2 characters, you then see actions that you did, and so on and so forth. And it's just such a great game. And once you beat all 3 scenarios, you unlock a 4th scenario, which is Dune, the jackass who messes with you throughout the whole game. And what makes this game extra special is that there's a magic system unlike anything else you've ever seen. You have every spell at the beginning of the game. Instead of using spells, you write down words of power. So in this, you actually write down what I did and do a spell book. So I have a spell book from when I played Treasure of the Rudras, and I go through and I'll put down what each and everything does. So it has word phrases, Ra will stand for fire, La will stand for earth or water, and so on and so forth. You can come up with all these crazy ass spells, or sometimes you can put a spell like Butt Munch, and it might just show a failure, or it might actually do a spell that does decent damage, or it does damage but uses too much mana, and it's just fun. It's fun to mess around with. Towards the end of the first playthrough, I found essentially a mid-max. Once you figure out the attack damage boost with the crit boost, and then you stack it onto your damn freaking attack power melee guy, and then you just crit bosses for like double damage and knock them out. And by doing that, it allows you to go through the second 2 playthroughs much faster, because the same spells that work in the first playthrough will work in the second 2 playthroughs. And I think that's the magic of the game, is that really you spend 20 hours playing through the first playthrough, and then you get the tools to get through the second 2 much quicker, but you still have the full breadth of the story. And I could talk about Treasure of the Rudras all day long. But yes, that is the final game. We're actually going to do a part 2 of this. Not right now, maybe next week. But I just want to talk about these 17 to start. Let me know if you have any history with these games. Let me know what you thought. I'm not a huge fan of repro carts anymore. I try to get the authentic material now, even though I can't translate it, or I don't know. But yes, that's where I'm at. It's, let me know what you thought of this video. And thank you guys, all of you, for supporting the channel. Like I said, thank you to the patrons who helped pay for this new light. And, it's been so nice getting a hold of you guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. So nice getting a hold of you. Take care.